Tri-Point Conversations, and I'm your host, Christina Lowe. Today I'm sitting down with Summer Dixon. Summer is a fractional COO, founder of Dixon Strategies, and a Vistage Chair here in Louisville. She's built her career in operations and sales, but what makes her different is that she doesn't just optimize businesses, she confronts leaders. Summer, I'm really glad you're here.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad to be here with you today.
Thank you. So let's start before Dixon Strategies
Ooh.
and before you were on your own. You spent nearly 2 decades in corporate.
I did.
America.
I did.
What was that like?
Yeah, well, it was amazing. Like I couldn't do what I'm doing now if it weren't for the lessons that I learned in that space. So I was in lending and agriculture is my background. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you anything you want to know about raising corn. Doesn't help me now. But yeah, that's the path I took. And so I got to see some amazing people model leadership for me. Mm-hmm. I also got to see some people do it poorly, mm-hmm. and you learn from both. Yeah. And then I also had the opportunity to lead myself pretty early in my career. Like I was a baby. Mm-hmm. They probably shouldn't have done that, but they did.
Yeah.
And so I had a real safe place to learn and make mistakes, mm-hmm. and really good mentors around me that helped kind of pick me back up and put me back on the right path. So I had a great experience.
I was going to ask you about that. If they started mm-hmm. you so young and mm-hmm. leading yourself and maybe others, what do you think helped you?
My mentor. Yeah, I would have absolutely fallen on my face. I've mm-hmm. said that publicly mm-hmm. before in video. I would have fallen on my face if it wasn't for the man who actually hired me into the position. He knew what he was doing. He mm-hmm. knew that I probably wasn't ideal, but I was the best of, I guess, the lesser of evils, mm-hmm. That I was not ideal. And he basically sat me down and said, you're going to learn what you need to. If you fail, it's because you failed, not because I failed you. Mm-hmm. And he made sure, he literally made a list of here's all the skills and here's the people in our organization that are the best at these things, and go see them and talk to them. And so I got to spend time with some really experienced folks learning from them. And I would have absolutely failed if it wasn't for him.
But it sounds like he really got to know you and mm-hmm. probably did more of a culture fit. And then he knew he could teach you the skills mm-hmm. and have you learn from others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because if I refused it, then it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you were in there, when did you first realize that you were, I don't know, say wired a little differently and could kind of see beyond what other people were seeing as you were leading that group? That's
a really good question. So it was, he was involved again. Mm-hmm. At the time, I had complained that we did not have a very good young beginning farmer program. Mm-hmm. And I'd fussed about it publicly and privately. And finally he pulled me in, sat me down. He said, well, you've said it enough. So now you get to go do this. Mm-hmm. You get to go, you can pull anybody you want to together. You get to create the team, and you get to define what our young beginning farmer program is going to look like.
Yeah.
And going through that process made me realize that, okay, I do have a skill set of bringing people together, mm-hmm. which is largely what I do now, yeah. right? Like I have a skill set about bringing people together, about marching towards a wild, hairy dream, because it was like, mm-hmm. we dreamed big. It was big and we did it, you know? And that I love starting new things. Like I realized in that I had a skill that other people didn't have, and that ambiguity makes me happy. Mm-hmm. In fact, once things get real operational, I start getting bored. Mm-hmm. I like forging my own path, and I like bringing people along with me. So that first project was pretty a big learning opportunity for me.
And would you say that was maybe the beginning, or how would you describe when you decided that it was time to leave corporate and go off on your own?
No, it was quite a bit later, actually. What was great about my corporate experience is, I just kind of alluded to it, that, you know, I get bored at some point. Mm-hmm. And so what was, and I'd said I was going to stay at that when I took the first job, I'll stay here till I got bored. I didn't realize I'd stay for as long as I did, you know, a couple of decades. But what was great about that organization is that it was growing so quickly that about every 3 years after that first leadership gig, there was something else for me to go do. There was a new team for me to launch, or mm-hmm. a new product for me to launch, or, you know, we launched a new brand while I was there, and I was really involved with that. And so doing all of those things, I kept getting to get better at
Learning
doing
more
that. Yeah, learning
skills
more.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where my last role, it was getting to the point where it was about 80% baked. So I was starting to look around, and I realized I'd worked in pretty much every division except for credit. And that wasn't going to be a good fit for me. And, it was probably time to do something else. And that's what started okay, what do I do next? Having those kind of conversations with myself. So
did you have your next opportunity planned out before you? Yeah.
No.
What was that like?
No. I'm a little fly by the seat of my pants, which I know doesn't fit operations, but I promise I am. I'm always looking for a great opportunity. And in this particular case, this is a huge organization. We had a new CEO. So there was always restructuring with new CEOs. And I had about 10 leaders reporting to me, and I had to get it to 7 or something. I don't remember what the number was. It was a long time ago. It wasn't. It was 4 years ago, but I've moved on.
Yeah.
And I realized I was probably the only one that wasn't real excited about my role anymore. And, so there was an opportunity to move on with a lot of grace, but not necessarily enough time to plan. So I went home, and I told myself I'd sit still for 6 weeks, which my sitting still, most people sitting still.
This is a different
I
definition
stink
of
at that.
still.
Yeah, I stink at that. And after that time, I started applying for corporate roles, and I was nauseous. Wasn't excited, wasn't scared, nauseous. It was I don't want to do this nauseous. And realized that if there was ever going to be an opportunity for me to kind of itch that, that entrepreneurship, to do that, that it was then. And that's what I did. And I haven't looked back. I've been really scared, but I've never looked back.
But you took that leap.
I did.
You had to be successful.
Yeah, I quit applying for jobs. Yeah, I think I quit applying for jobs by August 1st which actually wasn't that long after I left. So I quit applying for jobs late summer, early fall. Yeah.
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 And then you started Dixon Strategies.
I did.
And so what do you do at Dixon Strategies? Who do you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with business owners, with CEOs. So it started as a fractional chief operating officer practice, and I still do some of that. That's all referral basis. I don't do a lot of business development around that because I like digging in. I like getting in there and digging in and taking a look at things and finding ways to make things better for people at work. And so I built that practice, and then realized I wanted to add something branded to my practice, and looked at several different things and landed on Vistage. The reason I landed on Vistage at the time was, I just love working with leaders. And I knew from my corporate career that the higher you got, the more lonely it was. I was in an executive role, and there weren't that many people that I could lean over to and say, hey, I got this problem.
Yeah.
It just wasn't, it just didn't make sense. And so Vistage does that. Vistage does that for CEOs, no matter where they are in their journey, in their leadership journey. It doesn't matter what kind of business it is or what size it is. It gives them a group of people around them that truly care about them and get to know them, and can help them kind of work through those decisions. And then they get one-on-one time with me, and I, those conversations, this is probably my favorite part of the month. Yeah. Is having those one-on-one conversations and really, digging into who people are as humans and how they show up as leaders, and because they're all great, but we can all be better. And so those conversations are really special.
So when you sit down and work with the CEO, what is the one thing or a couple things that you're really looking for?
For me to agree to work with them. Yeah. They can't be a jerk. I have a no jerk rule. Yeah. I say it a little more crassly off air. And then beyond that, I look for folks that, I almost said self-aware, but that's not it. They're just open to learning. They know they don't know anything. They know they're smart, but they know they don't know everything. That's super helpful. And I've also learned that the leaders that are what we'd call a lifelong learner, that know that there's really no end to education. Yeah. Right. It's just that we stop learning, but that doesn't have to stop. Yeah. And so those folks tend to be really great fits.
How does that work though when you sit down with a high level leader that, you talked about that being a smart person, or maybe is used to being the smartest person in the room or being in charge, what changes when you come in and help work with them?
I deeply care for them, but I'm not emotionally attached to the outcome of the decision they have to make. And so I also have no agenda.
Yeah. Your agenda is to support them.
Yeah. I'm just here to
for
support them. And honestly, if our relationship doesn't work, that's okay too for me.
Yeah.
I'll talk to somebody else. And so when you don't have that emotional attachment and to the outcome, there's things that you can say and questions that you can ask that nobody else can. And that same mentor I mentioned earlier, there was one moment where he sat down with me and he says, nobody's ever accused you of not being direct. And it wasn't working in that particular situation, but it does work now.
Yeah.
Because I am unbothered by asking difficult questions. And I think that's what I bring to the table in those conversations.
And I guess the best thing that can happen is that they do take your advice, and then you can see kind of how it changes them and the team.
Yeah. I'm a little cautious with giving direct advice. Now, if I'm asked a point blank question, or it's something that I have experience in, then I don't mind sharing my experience. But what I've found is that most people know the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Most people already know. They just need somebody to ask them really good questions and to walk through that conversation of processing the thing, and they get there on their own. Yeah.
Is each time sitting with the CEO, is there a process that you go through, or you got to feel it out to understand where they're at?
Yeah, I want to meet them where they are. I get to know them, of course, and they are all different. So I don't have a defined process. I do have a question at the end of every conversation that I have with them that I always ask. But outside of that, because they're just all different, and they aren't going to all react productively if I applied the same process or approach every time.
Yeah. Now, you've described yourself as being direct. Have you ever pushed a CEO too far?
Oh, probably. Yeah. Probably. I'm trying to think of an example. Yeah. So I'm talking about with Dixon Strategies. It is an absolute yes. In corporate world, have I pushed another leader too far with my directness? 100%, and it got me in trouble, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But with starting my practice early on, there was a startup leader that I was very direct with what would happen if things continued the way they were, and it did happen, but he wasn't ready to hear it. It eventually happened, but he wasn't really ready to hear it. I should have approached that a little differently, but we all learn.
Yeah. And as you've worked with so many CEO and leaders, I guess, how would you describe one that is ready and eager to continue to grow and learn versus one that is plateaued and really is not ready to?
Yeah. So eager and ready to learn is easy to identify. And it's that they know they don't have all the answers. They don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And most of them have actually already hired people that are smarter than them. And so they're trying to navigate, okay, what does that look like? Where do I trust? Where do I delegate? Where do I follow up? How do I maximize the potential of all these people around me? And they're asking really, really good questions. And those are the folks that tend to be in that growth pattern.
And I'm sure they have to be vulnerable to be able to say that is a weakness of theirs, and that's why they've hired on someone. Yeah,
vulnerability is not easy for CEOs, but yes.
Yeah. Have you had to help people get to there, or they typically, because they've hired someone, they've understood it?
I think the people that go hire people that are smarter than them or complement their skills typically know it. But and I'm going to use the word ego. Okay. And I think that word gets a bad rap. I think we all have ego. It's, do we manage our ego well or not? That's the issue. And it's impossible to not have ego and be in an executive role. Because there's this level of confidence that comes with that. And so it's, how well are they managing their ego when it comes to their hiring or asking questions and being vulnerable? Because that's, if you're managing your ego well,
then you can be vulnerable.
Then you can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And as someone who has not always been good, and I'm certainly still not comfortable with vulnerability, I get it. I get it. And, but I also recognize when someone has more to say or more to share and they're not out of fear, and can call that out a little bit in a very loving way.
You mentioned ego. Are there other blind spots that you've noticed among leaders?
As far as blind spots go, are they getting the feedback? That's probably one that I've seen multiple times. Like, are you really getting the feedback? Because if everybody's thumbs upping you all the time, then, and that's all you're getting, then you're probably not.
But I'm sure it probably depends on how the leader receives feedback.
Well, it does, right?
Yeah.
And so you get into that, but the first question is, are you getting it? Because if you're not, then okay, why? Yeah. Why aren't you getting it? Why is there not the psychological safety in your organization for you to get what you need? And it could be them. It could be, that they don't have a process for it. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons, but that's in there, but getting out of their own heads. And, I think that especially smart people, when they're faced with any kind of an opportunity or a challenge, that they start telling themselves stories really fast about all the context without having the data, and they don't get curious. Yeah. And man, when you stop being curious and start depending on that voice inside your head, like it's probably not going to end well. Yeah. I think that happens a little quickly sometimes with people.
What about, let's pivot a little bit, Pollination Lab. So you work with women founders and CEOs. What is that like? Yeah,
so that's actually more of a passion project. So there's Pollination Lab and Collaborate, which you're a part of. Yes. So, and they've kind of merged together at this point. That's just fun. That's not work. It's not monetized. I think I shared earlier that in that first project, I learned that I really like connecting people, and I really like getting smart people in a room. And that actually started when I left corporate and was doing some networking, and I'd met several cool women business owners, and they were asking me, knowing what I was doing, is, well, are you meeting other cool women business owners? I'm like, yeah, there's a ton in Louisville.
There are.
Like, it's a thing. Yeah. And they're all wonderful, and they wanted introductions. And so I hosted a breakfast in January of 23, and it was 7 women. And we had so much fun. We said, well, let's do it again next month. We'll name it Collaborate, and we'll do it again next month, and we'll invite friends. And now just once a month, there's either a cocktail hour or breakfast that I'll throw on everybody's calendar. There's like 110 on the invite list. Yeah. And roughly 30 come, but these are busy, and it's not always the same 30. And we still have the original 7 that come, which is really cool that it's been that meaningful. And every time I leave there, I didn't know how much I needed that time with them, and I feel fulfilled, and others have said that too. Yes. And you never know what we're talking. There's no agenda whatsoever. And we've solved business issues. We've found revenue. And then we've also, talked about mothering teenagers. I mean, it's just all over the place. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been going about a year, and it has been amazing. And when you talked originally about, bringing people together, that's what the brunches feel like. It's just bringing strong women, business leaders, owners together just to talk. Yep. Yeah. And understand, any challenges, and support each other. Whether it's in life and kids or businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it has been great.
Yeah. It's kind of cool because a lot of the women in there give advice. They're paid to give their advice, and we all get it for free or for the cost of lunch or breakfast. Yeah.
You operate in Louisville's business community, but I'm assuming you also see national patterns. Are there things that you see that Louisville's doing well or could be doing better compared to other areas?
Yeah. I think there's other people in our community that can answer that question better than I can. I do get to work a little bit on the West Coast, and I just find it fascinating how they've built, so the startup culture there, and just the different ways that they're using technology. But it's also been there longer, right? It's been there longer. I know from some of the Vistage resources that we have, I know that Louisville community, the Louisville leaders, are more they have a more positive outlook than their peers across the country. They're more likely to hire At least that's what they've been telling us in the surveys.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to the community that we tend to be pretty optimistic. And, it's a good reflection on us.
Do you think Louisville seems to think more strategically versus reactively?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I have an opinion, but I don't have an informed opinion. I think we have so much opportunity. But we just need to kind of get ourselves together and go get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we certainly have the skill set. So
there are a lot of skills here in Louisville, and a lot of different industries, but some big ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which you've been part of corporate. You started your own business. What would you say your definition of success? Has that changed over time?
Yes. Yes, it has. I'm trying not to steal her thunder. You and I have a mutual friend who's writing a book on this.
Yes.
So I hope you have her on.
I do.
Okay. Yeah. And she actually just released a survey, which is on my LinkedIn if anybody's interested in filling out the survey, talking about, in her case, it's currency. She's talking about currencies, life currencies. And early on, it was definitely, money and achievement. All right. So I'm super ambitious, super competitive, all those things. I think it's pretty natural. And so it was money and achievement for a really, really long time. And then, life happens and I've had some things happen in my life where, I was in a position where I was fully supporting my kiddos, and that makes things different. Right.
Yes.
Cause I'm ambitious, but there's less risk I can take. Right. And then now as I kind of move into this stage of life, achievement's taken a bit of a back seat, which is wild. Money's still very important to me, but freedom is starting to become way more important. Not working with people I don't feel comfortable working with.
Yeah.
Getting to choose my clients.
You can say no if you want to.
Yeah, getting to choose where I work, getting to choose when I work to some extent. Now, I'm gonna be very careful because it drives me insane when we have business owners and founders being like, I can do whatever I want. No, you can't.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
You still have
you can't.
commitments and clients.
Yeah. Like, sometimes it takes a 14-hour day and you don't get to pick when that 14-hour day is all the time, but you can learn to manage your own calendar to give yourself wiggle room, to think and to do things outside of the business. So.
Yeah. I do have a quick little section, what I like to call a lightning round.
Okay.
Quick questions. What's your morning ritual look like?
My preferred morning ritual or my actual one?
What you would prefer?
My preference, this is one thing I've learned in business ownership, is that I actually have a preference of not getting up till 7 and not really having to talk to many people till about 9 and then working late.
Yeah.
That's just my circadian rhythm, so a great morning for me is not getting up till 7 a.m. and having a quiet cup of coffee.
Yeah. So easing into the day.
Yeah, just kind of easing into the day and, not drinking the coffee while I'm putting my makeup on. It's a little luxurious to get to sit and have a cup of coffee and read the news in the morning.
Yeah.
But yeah.
A leadership book that you would actually recommend?
Oh, I have a top 5 list, but the number one most recommended book that I have told people about and purchased, it's probably obscene how many of these I've purchased, is The 4 Agreements. And it does not come off as a leadership group or a leadership book, but it's a little mystic. And so you just have to kind of get past that part. Some people I tell, start at page 27, read to page 92, you're good.
Okay.
It's a quick book, and it is talking about the social contracts that we have, that we all make with society. The problem is we make them unconsciously. So the minute I was born, I signed the social contract to be the oldest daughter, right? What does that mean? And I signed up for it, And what the book is talking about is that there's really only 4 social contracts that we have to make, and we need to make them consciously. And it's I can see if I can do it off the top of my head. Be impeccable with your word. Always do your best. Don't take anything personally. Oh,
we'll have to read the book to find out.
I know. Yeah, there's the hanger.
I haven't heard
Go
of
read
that
it.
book. Yeah.
Oh,
I've read a lot of business books.
It changed. Yeah. It changed how I showed up in life, not just at work. But it changed how I showed up in life.
Yeah. Something people would be surprised to know about you.
Oh, this is the one. I love talking about this. I learned to drive on prototypes for the C5 Corvette.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So my dad worked for GM for 37 years. He was at Corvette for 21 of those. And he rose up, he worked on the line, and he rose up till he was in management.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not an engineer, but he was always on the teams that designed Corvettes.
Mm-hmm.
And that C5 one was one he was super proud of. It ended up getting the Motor Trend, or the Car of the Year that year that it was released. I think it was released in 97. And so he would bring prototypes home because he would drive them. He was such a car guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'd take it back and say, no, this is still shimmying, or we need to put this other, whatever.
Yeah, but you got to test it out.
And you got to test it out. And so I learned to drive on prototype Corvettes. He had a different color every week, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I come home one day and there's a manual shift S10 pickup waiting there. So I had to learn how to drive all over again because it does not drive the same. Super
the same.
grateful for it. And I loved it, but it does not drive the same as a Corvette.
Yeah, going to school in a Corvette versus a truck.
And it was really cool.
Yeah. What's your favorite place to recharge?
So with friends, for sure. I've got, this really, really great group. In fact, there's a group of us a few of us that had dinner last night. And I walked into that dinner pretty frazzled, like I was rushing around and a little frazzled, and really thinking about the day. And by the end of it, I'm completely relaxed and my shoulders dropped, and walked away with good advice and big hugs and, all the things, because that's what we do for each other. And, the other place, I love to travel. Anytime I'm close to any body of water, I feel more comfortable in my own skin than any other time. So
favorite beach vacation?
Not necessarily favorite beach vacation. I love, I love Grayton Beach in Florida. It's my favorite beach. I almost didn't want to say it because I don't want anybody else to go there. I've spent the southern end of the Outer Banks is a second home for my family. We spent a lot of time down there. But just give me water.
Be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And as you think through your career, as someone else might be in corporate or wanting to start their own business, what advice would you give them?
That could be a whole podcast. One thing, you've got to be true to yourself. I think even 4 years ago when I left corporate, I don't remember, and maybe it's because of what I do now, it's changed my algorithm, but I feel like I get blasted on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook with these people of leave your corporate job or, and you've got to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
If my corporate role had kept feeding what I was looking for, I wouldn't have left.
Yeah.
I love the people. We had a great mission, but I was just ready for something else. And even then I didn't know what it was. But really listen to yourself and do your best to prepare, but don't over prepare, because whatever you think you're going to market with is not what's going to make you money.
Yeah.
You've got to be real willing to pivot and change and take feedback and make sure you've got good people around you. Like, I'm going to go back to this 1,000 times, right? Make some friends that are in the space, not necessarily doing exactly what you're doing, but you've got to have somebody to lean over to and say, why do I want an S Corp? Or do I need an attorney for a contract? The answer is yes. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
sound advice, real advice
that really knows what they're doing. Yeah. So make those friends, and then lean on them. You've got to open your mouth and ask the questions. I've never had anybody refuse to meet with me or refuse to give me advice ever.
Because you were being vulnerable, I'm assuming, and asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people, like, I don't know about you, but I feel special if somebody wants my brain.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You want mine?
When we talk in the breakfast, everyone is sharing advice, and it's about helping others. And I do. I'll help you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But you didn't just start in, Dixon Strategy. I mean, you had a lot of experience. And I think that is something that, yes, like you said, people think that corporations are bad. Not necessarily.
No, they're wonderful.
There's so much you can learn from them, leaders, the good, the bad. But then experience that if you want to start something, then take that experience with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just don't let, 2 final thoughts on that is whatever you do, whether you stay in corporate or you go out on your own, whatever you do, the voice inside your head is the meanest human being in your world. Period.
Yes.
Do not listen to that voice. The fear, no matter what change you're making, because it's human nature to resist change, right? Like the fear that you feel when you make those changes is real and painful, but it's not a reason to stop.
I do know.
Yeah. I know you know.
Yeah.
No,
Because there's voices that say, are you sure you can do this?
Yeah.
Are you sure that you should be, helping this client? Is it there someone else?
Yep.
Well, there might be someone else, but
Yeah.
it's me right now.
Yeah. I had, in fact, when I leaned over to my friend and said, this is what the voice, and this is what they're telling me. She looked at me. She went out on her own a long time ago and she's built a really great business. She looked at me and says, well, if one of your friends was saying that to herself, what would you tell them? And I'm like, oh.
Yeah. And that's what you need sometimes.
That'll shut that voice down real quick. I wouldn't let anybody talk to one of my friends the way I'm talking to myself right now.
Absolutely not.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. And if someone out there is wanting to get a hold of you, where should they go?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm active on LinkedIn. Just search for Summer Dixon and I will pop right up.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for listening to TriPoint Conversations. Thanks for listening to TriPoint Conversations. Make sure you hit subscribe wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with a friend or someone who's navigating their own next chapter. And if you know a story that deserves to be heard, or maybe that story is yours, head to tripointstrategicgroup.com and send me a note. I can't wait to keep this journey going with you and introduce you to more incredible people who are shaping their communities one story at a time.